All right, my name is Katie-Lynn Fernandez, and for my grant proposal project, I'm introducing music-based somatic co-regulation, or MUSICER, as the kids would call it. It's designed specifically for mothers and their children who are survivors of domestic violence. The goal is simple: to rebuild the emotional connection and regulation through movement, music, and shared experience. The significance of this issue is that domestic violence is extremely prevalent. About 40% of women experience physical or sexual violence or stalking, and over 60 million women report psychological aggression. Because women are often the primary caregivers of children, the trauma directly impacts the children. Children in these environments are significantly more likely to experience abuse themselves. Such as myself, these two photos are a reference of my past. The top right is my childhood home, in which years of abuse was endured. The bottom left is a result of a child being abused for years, seeking familiarity in their relationships. I unknowingly entered a relationship with somebody who was equally as physically violent. Exposure to abuse disrupts emotional, psychological, and physiological development. It can often lead to insecure attachment patterns, and long-term stress keeps cortisol elevated, which strains the body over time. This creates what we call allostatic overload, basically the body breaking down under chronic stress. Another thing that did in fact happen to me: I developed an autoimmune condition called Graves' disease, thyroid eye disease, and chronic pain, aside from PTSD, anxiety, and depression. Now, not everybody is as lucky as me to survive, to recover. Many survivor parents are overwhelmed and lack support. A common coping strategy today is to give children a phone or a screen. While dance and music videos seem engaging, they're actually passive. They don't build connection, co-regulation, or emotional attunement, and over time it can actually isolate instead of reduce stress. So what ends up happening is these survivors that are parents end up not having the capacity to really participate in standard therapies like parent-child interaction therapy because it is so demanding on structured coaching and externalized behaviors of the child. It doesn't directly address the embodied dysregulation, nervous system healing, or music-based emotional processing through lyrical music. There's a gap here, and that's where my model fits. Here's what we know. Dance reduces anxiety. Music influences stress responses. Lyrics may subtly reinforce positive self-beliefs. So my hypothesis is combining all three creates an even stronger psychological effect. So you may be wondering, what are you talking about? You're going to subconsciously program these children? No, not exactly. But studies already show that somatic exercises to solely instrumental music is great for focus and relaxation. But that's not what we're going for here. What I'm going for is to have these children be spoken to in ways that they may not be familiar with. Serenaded, if you will. And that's where the lyrical priming component comes in. Otherwise, the shared somatic experience is going to help develop the co-regulation aspect of the exercise. The goal is that the parent and the child will both learn from the experience of remembering how to kindly speak to yourself. And maybe the child will remind the parent what it was like if the parent was the victim of psychological or physical abuse. And that is also where that connection and co-regulation stems from. So music-based somatic co-regulation is an extension of parent-child interaction therapy. So what is PCIT? It's an evidence-based behavioral program It's designed for children 2 to 7 that typically have disruptive behavior. It doesn't matter the origin. But they focus on pride skills, so praise, reflection, imitation, description, and enjoyment. And those are the skills the parent learns to model to the child. So yes, this is somewhat inverted, as in the child might help teach the parent. However, the key distinguishers, it's shifted more towards shared movement, emotional attunement, and internal regulation. So it's both the child and the parent's experience to find that regulation in themselves, but it will also be mirrored. So the study focuses on mothers who are survivors of domestic violence. There will be a total sample of 12 participants divided into 2 groups. Each participant must have a child between ages 4 and 12. It doesn't matter if they want to bring more than one child, that's fine. The sample sizes will just vary slightly. The small group size is intentional and to prevent overstimulation and maintain safety. Participants will be randomly assigned to an experimental group where they receive lyrical music for their somatic dance exercise, and the control group where they will do the dance exercise with just instrumental music. The sessions will be 60 minutes once per week for 6 weeks. The follow-up occurs at 3 weeks after completion. But there will also be a pre-test baseline, a post-test immediately after the first session, and a reflective immediately after the 6th session. So that does make this a longitudinal pre-test, post-test design. Participation is voluntary with informed consent for both parent and child. The parents will be analyzed on these psychological scales measuring self-compassion, interoceptive awareness, self-esteem, self-efficacy, mood states, and anxiety. These will allow us to track both emotional and physiological regulation changes. Children will be asked to answer open-ended interview-style questions about the overall experience, their connection with their parent, and their overall mood. I anticipate to find that both groups should improve in mood and awareness from movement alone. However, the experimental group is expected to show greater self-compassion, self-esteem, and emotional regulation. And I assume anxiety will likely be the highest at the beginning due to discomfort, but then decrease. For the children, I expect them to show improved mood, improved emotional expression, and a stronger connection with the parent. And these effects should be stronger and longer lasting in the experimental group. For the broader impact purpose of this study, I have included 4 personal experiences of violence, abuse, death, and tragedy that personally affected my peers, my community, and people I am close to, and myself. So this is a very personal slide here. Klamath County has significantly higher than average violent crime rates. This reflects a deeper systemic issue: isolation, domestic violence, limited resources, and this intervention directly addresses those conditions at the family level. This project is grounded in lived experience. It reflects the real barriers survivors face, trauma, and lack of support. The model was developed not just academically, but through my real-world healing process. This work aims to break cycles of violence, increase awareness, and empower survivors. It reframes healing as something accessible and relational, not clinical and distant. The larger goal is cultural, making domestic violence visible, address it publicly, and prevent the deaths occurring in our community today. Just to give some context about what we're looking at right here, the photo in the center is my tattoo artist. I have known him for over 10 years. The 2 girls on the bottom left were his daughters, and they were both murdered by one of the girl's boyfriends. Just another example of relational violence. This caused such great grief in our community when it happened. And still to this day, there's just an irreparable sense of damage and distrust for our community. The little girl on the right was actually my friend's daughter, whose baby's mother refused to get a car seat for her and was using substances and driving under the influence, and that resulted in that little girl's death. And lastly, at the top right, this was my own incident that had been documented on the news and reported online. This work is not abstract to me, it's personal. I know what it feels like to grow up in environments where safety is unpredictable, where connection is strained, and where you learn to survive before you ever learn to feel at home in your body. I also know what it takes to rebuild from that place, slowly, intentionally, and often without the kind of support that should have been there from the beginning. What I'm proposing through Musicer isn't just an intervention, it's a reflection of what I've seen work in real life. It's grounded in the belief that healing doesn't always start with words. Sometimes it starts with something much simpler, moving together, feeling together, and creating moments of safety that the body can actually recognize. If we give even a few families a way to reconnect, to feel less alone in their experience and more capable in their relationship with each other, that matters. Because those small shifts in regulation and connection are what interrupt the cycles of trauma. I'm not only approaching this as a researcher, but as someone who understands the weight of what we're trying to do and the possibility of what can happen when we get it right, one dance at a time.